Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2:12 on Thursday, July 17th, and I would like to call this meeting to order. I'll ask the secretary to please call roll.
This is Angie Castellanos for the record, and this is roll call. President Dockweiler.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Superintendent Canavero.
Here.
Member Hudson.
Here.
Member Braxton.
Present.
Member Dawson Owens.
Here.
Member Els.
Here.
Member Ford.
Here.
Member Lane is absent, excused. Member Orr.
Present.
And Member Walker is absent, excused. Madam President, you have quorum.
Thank you so much. I would also like to note for the record that we are joined by Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, I will now open up the first period of public comment under agenda item 2. I'd like to remind everyone that comments should be limited to items on the agenda. Please ensure you fill out a comment card, turn the microphone on, and state your name for the record. Additionally, please note that items categorized as future agenda requests are not included in this public comment period. I will also limit each speaker to 3 minutes, and time will be monitored by Vice President Hughes. I will begin with any members of the public who have attended to provide comments in person. Seeing none here in Las Vegas, we'll go to Carson City.
There are no public comments here in Carson City.
Thank you. Has the secretary received any written submissions for public comment 2 at this time?
We have no written comments at this time.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 3, approval of flexible agenda. May I have a motion to approve the use of a flexible agenda, allowing me to take items out of order if necessary?
I move to approve the flexible agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to agenda item 4. And I just want to remind for everybody online joining, board members joining online, please make sure to raise your hand or indicate that you would like to speak if we miss your raised hand online. And as we move into item 4, we'll be talking about information, discussion, and possible action regarding the selection of the review tools for the superintendent applications. And for everyone listening in, today is our special meeting where we'll be talking about this topic. Our application is currently live, and the deadline to apply is close of business on July 21st. We will have our next scheduled board meeting July 30th, where we will select the interviewees to, or the candidates to interview, excuse me. And then mid-August, we will convene another special meeting, should the board feel that's appropriate, to conduct those in-person interviews. So as part of this recruitment process, each applicant for the position of State Superintendent of Public Instruction will be submitting a curriculum vitae or CV and a one-page strategic vision statement. To ensure a fair and consistent review of these materials, we are being asked to consider and potentially approve a scoring tool that will help us evaluate each candidate's qualifications based on defined criteria. The tools before us include a rubric and accompanying guidance that are intended to support the board in identifying which applicants should advance to the formal interview stage. This is a key step in ensuring the process remains transparent, equitable, and aligned with the leadership needs of the department. So all members have had opportunity to review the scoring rubric. So we can open this up for discussion, or if someone likes it as is, we could accept a motion. I look to my fellow board members as we begin.
Member Braxton for the record. And so I know that at our last meeting, we wanted to make sure that the scoring rubric reflected the application itself. And it appears as many of the items are covered with this. And I'm just curious to know if any other members noticed any discrepancies.
Thank you, Member Braxton. I as well agree. I think that that accurately reflects a lot of the information that we covered. I'm curious as well if anyone has any concerns or if others are in agreement with this.
Member Hughes for the record. I just had one small minor potential adjustment, but agree, Member Braxton, this largely covers sort of what we talked about in the big categories. One, on the communication skills, I think I would it's some of the indicators are written to just like to have experience, and some seem to be like we're trying to assess how effective of a communicator they are, which I don't think you can really do through a resume. So I might just, I mean, again, it's just very small tweak just to like, maybe we just say like experience with external communication. Maybe that's what we're looking for versus effectiveness, because I think that will be more for the in-person. It's like demonstrate strong public speaking, writing, and community messaging. It's like, I don't think we'll actually be able to assess that on a written document. But again, I think the category is right. So that would just be my one potential tweak.
Thank you, Vice President Hughes. Move to board members online. Any suggestions or comments?
This is Member Annette Dawson Owens. I am good with the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jump in, please.
This is Member Else. I move to approve it with Member Hughes's recommendation.
Member Orr, I second.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion and a discussion, or excuse me, a second. Any discussion? Oh, forgive me. We'll go to Member Ford to begin the discussion.
Thank you. I'm good with it as well. I wanted to find out if we could possibly do what CCSD did when they were conducting their search. And even though they agreed on a set framework of questions, they allowed for a related follow-up question if that person had like something to ask, like to piggyback on specifically for more context when the interviewee was giving an answer. So I just want to see if we could do that in the actual process instead of trying to add more individual questions in.
Thank you, Member Ford, for bringing that up. I'm curious, are you talking about the actual interviews during the in-person interview or the screening rubric under agenda item 4?
Right now?
Yeah.
The rubric looks really good. I was just mostly like trying to make sure it linked to, because they're different items, but like make sure it linked to the questions and the application, but I'm good with the rubric. You're right, I'll hold my question until the proper time. Thank you.
No, thank you. Any other discussion? As a reminder, we have a motion and a second on the table. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so pass. We'll move on to agenda item 5, information discussion and possible action related to the, actually, I'm going to back up to item 4 again. So we need to talk about the process once we have screened our candidates, the process of getting that information back to the Department of Education. So as previously mentioned, close of business on July 21st will be the date that candidates have to apply. And again, our next board meeting is July 30th. So it's a quick turnaround. If we could, what I would suggest as a starting point for this conversation is if we as a board, if we were to receive the materials potentially by July 23rd, we would get them turned around by close of business on July 28th, allowing the department time on the front end to redact information, and then also giving them time on the back end to compile that data for us for the 30th board meeting.
Member Braxton, for the record, I'm looking at my calendar to see if that includes any weekend time.
Yeah, so the 23rd is a Wednesday, and so that would allow time Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the 28th is a Monday. And this again would be to submit your scores from the screening rubric that we just approved. And that information would be sent to the Department of Education and then presented to us at the July 30th board meeting. And we can talk about the format that we would like to receive it. Member Orr?
Thank you, Member Orr. I just wanted to clarify, do you mean that we would turn it in Sunday so the department, I just want to make sure, would the department have enough time then? They would have the 28th and 29th then, because it seems like they would need at least 2 full days.
Member Orr, excellent question and consideration. And we have spoken with the department and they have said this timeline would work for them.
Thank you.
Member Braxton, for the record, so is it that we would have the 3 days then to review the items to make sure that we submit no later than the 28th, and that would be 28th at the end of the day? Oh, okay, all right. So then technically there are 4 days to review, not including the weekends.
The 23rd to the 28th.
Yeah.
Can include the weekends, however we want to look at that. But yes, it would be 4 full days.
Okay.
Yeah. Member Ford.
Thank you. I'm not sure where this would fit into the agenda, but I had sent an email asking for clarification about the recruitment process and whether or not it's being advertised on traditional employment platforms. So I don't know if this fits in or not, but like I said, I never got a response, and I'm a little bit concerned that where it's not being shared widely enough.
Thank you, Member Ford. I want to speak to your first point because I think that will help direct this conversation. I was correct in moving us on to agenda item 5. The process is under that agenda item. So we'll start that item with this conversation of how we will move into the interview phase by receiving the information on the candidates that we are screening.
Okay, I didn't see that it was like included in that, but that's fine if we can talk about it then. Thank you.
All right, so just a reminder, we're on agenda item 5 and we're talking about the information discussion and possible action related to the interview phase of the superintendent selection process. And part of that interview phase is how we want to receive that information and the deadlines for our screening so the department can present that information to us on the 30th. So we're talking about having application window closes the 21st of July. And then the department will redact the information and send that information out to board members for each of the applicants by ambitious close of business on the 23rd. And then the board will have approximately 4 days to review candidates, conduct those screeners using the rubric, and then submit back to the Department of Education our scores on each candidate by close of business on Monday, July 28th.
May I ask a clarifying question, please?
Please. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is Member Orr for the record. When we are we scoring like in an editable PDF format, like with an X in a box? I can't tell from the rubric itself. Is there an extra column wherein we score? And then are the scores it doesn't matter to me, but are they anonymous, or do we put our names on them? Are there just like any of those things that we need to know before we get these back to us next week?
Member Orr, that's a good question and something for this board to decide. So there's a couple different pieces, and this process, your question falls into this process, including the timelines. It's also the format. So one recommendation, if you'll look on page 4, you'll see the candidate name, the reviewer name, and then the score for each of the 11 domains. So we could just submit that. We could submit the entire document where we highlight, circle, or put an X or a check mark in the box that we feel is most representative on pages 1 and 2. It's really up to what the board, how they'd like to proceed. So that's one piece of this. The second piece of the process that we would like to receive the information in is, do we want, which I think would be the most, I don't know, simple, I guess, if you will, is if we each submit our scores, and then when the department compiles all the information, they do it in aggregate. So for candidate 1, we would get a total score. Candidate 2, we get a total score. And then if there are questions about any particular candidate under any particular domain, we could offer that during the meeting because we would have done this work and we would have that information. So that's another piece that the board needs to decide. Member Orr?
Thank you. If possible, if the department wouldn't mind, I think it might make sense, even if it is done anonymously, to have, for instance, each domain executive leadership experience, and then it might have all of our scores aligned. So it might say 4, 4, 3, 3, 4, and then a 1, 4. Just so if we can see that there is any particular outliers, it might open the discussion. It might make it a little bit more clear rather than having just a final score, because I think that might just make the discussion happen more quickly rather than having just a final score on each of the categories where we don't understand where that score came from, if that's amenable to everybody else.
Yeah, Member Orr, I really like that. We could have a total score for each candidate in each of the 11 domains, as well as a final score. Member Hughes.
Yeah, I just had a question, Member Orr. I agree with what I think both of you are saying, that it would be helpful to have the total score in each category as well as the final score. Were you suggesting that plus individual members, or just the rolled up level for each domain?
I'm not trying to make it too complicated, but I do think that within a domain, it would be nice to see. So I guess what I'm saying is that it would be nice if under a domain, if we had strategic vision as the domain, if we had everybody has 4s and 3s, but there's one person that has a 1, and that 1 is bringing the score down, I think it opens it, it allows for better conversation if we can see that there's 1 1 or 2 1s that are bringing that score down, rather than just seeing the score on executive leadership is lower for this person. I think it allows for a better conversation rather than confusion on the back end. If I provided that person a 4 and I don't understand why that person has a lower score, does that, like, if you, so if on the rubric, and I'm sorry that I'm not there, but just if on the rubric it said executive leadership and you could just see like a tally, 4, 4, 3, 3, 4, 1, 1, and then the total score for executive leadership, and then strategic vision, and the scores, and then the total, and then academic achievement, and each score, and then the total. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Member Orr. Yeah, this Member Hughes. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I think my only request, and others, again, I don't have a super strong opinion about this, but I don't know that it's helpful to tie the individual board member's name with each of those individual scores. But I think just having them there could be helpful, so we can see like, oh, there was, yeah, one outlier to it, because that seems like it would take us down a different rabbit hole than like talking about the qualifications. But yeah, I think that seems like a good idea to me.
Thank you, Vice President Hughes and Member Orr. Yes, I've confirmed with the department, and that is possible. We can definitely do that.
Member Braxton, for the record. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear with what we would have considered. We have the scoring sheet that would have the final score. There is not one item that's weighted more than the other. And so knowing that we're still going by the total score, and in discussion, conceivably, you could have several candidates that have the same score, but show strengths in any of the 11 domains separately. That being the case, I think it is necessary and helpful to hold on to our rubric, or the rubric, if you will, for each candidate, so that when we have discussion, we can refer to the rubric as part of the discussion, or tiebreaker, if you will, should that occur.
Thank you, Member Braxton. Good points. And I see Member Ford, your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Again, when I was in CCSD, there was a few times when we had similar experiences to this, and it was when we would have superintendent evaluation processes, when we were hiring legal counsel, and when the short amount of time when we were considering hiring a new superintendent or an interim superintendent. And it was advised to us that we should make all of our scoring public. And we did. You can go on to CCSD's reference materials, and for all the evaluations and all these things, it has literally like our handwriting and our notes of what we scored. So I think that it needs to, for instance, if I love a candidate and I want to mark them all solid 4s, okay, but I need to be able to answer to that, and not just like some member must have voted for all this person. So that's the purpose of public board meetings and reference material, is to explain your decisions when making decisions. So I think that it should be separate, a reference material item for each potential candidate, and in that it would have all of the members' rubrics with their answers in it. And then what they would do is, like, I think it was our attorney, maybe our board meeting assistant, I'm not sure. They would put, like, you know, for instance, for the law firms, they would say, here's the top 3 and here's the ranking order. And then from there, we could determine if we want to interview this one or that one. But there should be one reference material that says how they all ranked in order from all the board members. And then there should be separate reference material. It could either be one huge PDF or it could be separate for each person, but those should include all of the members' rubrics for each individual candidate. It's not fair otherwise, I don't think.
So Member Ford, just so that I'm clear, for example, on the CV screening tool superintendent search July 2025 document, that would be every member submitting page 4 and then having a document compiled from that, a cumulative document.
No, it would be like, or yes, it could be just be 4. Because I'm thinking of how it used to look in the other one, but yeah, it could just be submit 4. It's just that if we were looking at it and you said, Danielle, why did you rank this person 4s in all of them when they don't have any type of fiscal management experience? Then I would be expected to explain myself. So I would say, like, at least have the main, like, things there so that I could then go, well, you know, it does look like they led a multi-million-dollar budget with transparency or whatever, you know, so we need to be able to still have the tools to, like, have the conversation easily if we're accessing it. But yeah, I think that would be fine, just to put one of those for each person.
Member Dawson Owens.
Go ahead, please.
My question is the process. To Member Orr's point, like, if we see that there is an outlier that's bringing someone's score down, right? are we deciding that we're just taking the top 3 for the score no matter what? Or if we have the discussion, then you're saying that there's a possibility that that person could change their score at that point? Or what is the point? Like, you might be discussing it, but what is our process? Or if you find that, you know what, there's 3 candidates that you like, but this 4th or 5th person, the only reason they're down there is because of, you know, an outlier decision. Is this why we're having this conversation? Because if we're just going to take the raw score, that's my question about the process.
Member Dawson Owens, you bring up a good point. Whether we are going to be changing our scores during the conversation, we leave them as is. What is the purpose of all of, you know, displaying all that information if it's not going to change the total tally? And to Member Hughes's point about going down potential avenues that may be off topic to the agenda item that we need to be focusing on. I'm looking to Dag Ott to see if he has any legal guidance on how he would recommend that we proceed.
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott. So I understood the purpose of the July 30 meeting to be select candidates for interview, and all of the work prior to that to be giving the board the information that it needs to be able to make that decision on July 30. So the scoring, the compilation of the scores, the delivery of all that material to the board will give it it'll have a chance to review all the CVs, it will have scores, and then I don't think there needs to be changes to numerical scoring systems because the whole purpose of the July 30th meeting is to just select candidates to interview. And you haven't boxed yourself in to say, we need to select only the top 3 or 5 or 6. So however that conversation goes, you have the freedom to select the people, and it could be the top 3, it could be 1, 2, 3, and 5. I think you have the flexibility to make those changes for invites on the 30th without going through the remaking of the sausage by trying to change scores on the fly and then have to re-average and resubmit things. So that's my understanding of how the process would work.
Thank you, Dag Ott. That's very helpful because then we could go back to our original comments about taking the aggregate scores and using those in totality. And I see Member Orr, you have your hand up, and then also Member Ford.
Thank you. This is Member Orr. My question is, if the score doesn't necessarily matter on that day, do we need to turn in our scores, or are we just coming prepared for a discussion? What is the point of turning in the scores ahead of time to be compiled?
Good question, Member Orr. I think that will help facilitate the conversation because if we turn in the scores and the department can add them all up and then they can provide them even in a rank order, say these are all the candidates from top score all the way down, then that'll give us a good starting point to have those conversations so that we don't necessarily, we can certainly go by one, but if there's top 6 that really stand out and there's the rest that are scored very low, that would really help direct our conversation. Member Ford, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think it's really important to get the scoring in and for us to all be ready to explain it because it's meant to be a snapshot of where the majority of us land. And it could be really valuable information. For instance, maybe there's 10 people that apply and we happen to see that there's only 3 that are above a certain threshold that we would consider to be acceptable, and everybody else based on just the general, is below it. That might be an easy, hey, let's just interview the top 3 or let's just send the top 3 through. But this is a really good example of including the non-voting board members because it's going to come down to a vote who we interview and who we send through to the governor. And we could essentially just come to the meeting and be like, I vote to and only interview these 4 people. And then they all pass, and then that's what we're doing. But this gives everybody who was mindfully selected to have a voice on this board the opportunity to explain why they do or don't support a certain candidate. And then the voting board members, I certainly will, but I hope will consider those, for the votes. But I think that the snapshot is really important. It's data, where we're standing. And then from there, we could get a piece of information about the person who ranks the top, and then everyone change their mind and decide not to interview that person. We're not married to the order or any information that comes from the rubric and our opinions on the people. It's really just a starting point for a conversation and a decision on who we interview. Those are my thoughts. I'm good with it. Thank you.
Member Orr, did you have another comment? If so, go ahead.
And I apologize for so many questions. When we are scoring, can we use the cover letter or any materials other than the CV in the scoring?
I will look to Dag Odd on this, but it's my understanding it's just the CV.
I guess I would look to what the posting says. If you've required them to submit a packet of materials, I think it's within the board's discretion to say we can look to anything in that packet if the board wanted to make it broader.
Thank you for that. I also want to remind the board that we do have a separate rubric for the vision statement. So we'll have the vision statement and then the rubric associated with that document as well. Member Braxton?
Member Braxton for the record. So I agree that the screening tool, it looks great with the amended item that we will add per Member Hughes. Sorry about that. And so the process, I think, is fair and complete with sufficient time to review the items so that we can then use the tool that includes the rubric, that includes the scoring sheet to make our input. So for discussion, right, for further discussion, the tool will allow for robust discussion. And should there be a tie in the total score, it's through the discussion that we can review all of the material that has been requested by each candidate. And so I think we're in a good space to move forward to accept the tool. There seems to be an understanding of the process. And if that is, if that's the case, then I actually move to approve the tool with the recommended process that includes the time allotted to get the information back from NDE in time for our July 30th meeting.
This is Member Orr. I will second.
Okay, so just so that everyone's clear, we are talking, the motion was to approve
the tool and process, since that's part of item 5, agenda item 5, we're
yeah, so the
approving-
CV screening tool superintendent search July 2025 document. So approving that tool and the dates of us to have to screen being July 23rd to July 28th. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Member Ford.
Thank you. I'm really wanting to support this process moving forward. That's why I'm just trying to make sure we're all clear on it, because I don't want any hiccups later. But to piggyback on that, I'm seeing it as we have the rubric to make sure it's fair. Now, if somebody sends in a video, that's why we have the rubric, because I shouldn't be able to rank them a 4 because I'm oh my God, super cute video 4, because that's not on the rubric. And it isn't the actual things that the board has determined are important. Now, if in that video, there was something that made me think that gave information about something in the rubric, like it said, oh, I used to run a huge company, yada, yada, but they hadn't included that, I could use that information to, in my rubric. So I think I just want to make sure we're all understanding how it works, again, so that it's fair. so that we don't run into an issue later on because we all had different lenses that we were scoring with. So is
Member
my
Braxton, for the record.
Mhm.
So I think you bring up a good point, Member Ford. And this would lead to the follow-up questions, right? So when asking questions of each candidate, if a candidate brings up something in their response to the questions, we can follow up, but it's important for us to begin with the same questions for each candidate.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the motion on the table and the process and the dates. So the motion is, and just to be clear, Member Braxton, it's on the document submitting page 4, or what specifically is included in the motion? Yes. Okay, so the entire tool. Thank you. Just want to make sure that everyone is clear. It's the entire tool, including pages 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the dates to review of July 23rd to 28th. We've had a motion, a second, and discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? All right. Excellent work, everyone. Under agenda item 5, I'll also draw everyone's attention to the vision, pulling up the title of the document. There's the NDE Superintendent Vision Statement Rubric, July 2025. And that is also a tool, a document that we will need to approve in which to score the vision statement that was submitted. And Member Ford, I apologize. I see your hand is up. Okay, we're good. All right, so I'll open this item to talk about and accept a motion on the vision statement rubric or conversation.
Member Annette Dawson-Owens, it looks to me then that the CV, the candidate CV is worth 44 points, correct? And this one is going to be worth 20. So that seems appropriate to me, just making sure that we're noting that and confirming that that's the case.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, noted. So the CV review is 44 points and the vision statement is 20 points. Well, seeing no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the vision statement rubric. There's a second?
Member Braxton, I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we've got a vision statement rubric passed. We will take well, hold on just a moment. Thank you everyone for your patience as we just confirm all the items that we will need to be prepared for on July 30th. The next item under agenda item 5 that we need to discuss are the actual interview questions. Members have received a list of those questions, and while the purpose of this is not to select those actual questions today, but to gather input from members about, for example, select your top 3 questions or top 3 topics that you would like to see in the final draft of those interview questions, so that the department has time to compile that more finalized list prior to our July 30th meeting. I will open this up for any thoughts or comments from board members. Member Orr, please kick us off.
Thank you. I do have a few comments. I would just like to start with, I think we can all say that there is some repetition here, which I'm sure we can comb through, and that's great. It means we're on the same page in so many ways, but beyond that, this is just a lot of questions. So I'm just wondering if we might start with a discussion of what, like, is there an appropriate amount of questions, knowing that like a number of questions that we think would get us to a place, not that this isn't like the 500-word essay kind of thing, but like, do we think that there is a number that would help us to better understand somebody without it killing them to interview with us?
Thank you, Member Orr. That's a great question. And we don't have to define that exact number today. We can see what comes in. I can share in my own personal experiences. I'm sure many of us have served on search committees. Anywhere in the realm of 6 to 9 questions might be appropriate, depending on, again, the length and what we're targeting for those responses. Vice President Hughes?
Thanks, Member Hughes, for the record. And yeah, appreciate that comment, because I think that was my thought as well. Member Orr's like, this is way too many, and we have to be concise and consolidate. Just for process, I think where we were thinking is we wanted to get sort of everybody's perspective on which of these questions or types of questions feel most important. And then we would work to whittle this down to a smaller number, taking that feedback, and then would present a more near final at our next board meeting for like final sign off. So I think the like exact number, probably don't need to agree on that, but the intent is to narrow it down significantly based on this conversation. Thank you for your thoughts.
Member Braxton, for the record, I think that we should address the domains. I agree with you that we don't want to have an exhaustive list of questions, because clearly we're leaving room for follow-up questions if they're necessary. But considering the fact that there are 7 items that are mentioned or brought to light for the sample interview questions, and having 1 or 2 questions per topic, taking advantage of the fact that we can consolidate some of these questions would be helpful. I just want to ensure that there is an equitable and defensible process, meaning that I recommend that we do ask each candidate the same set of core questions, whatever those questions are, but same set of core questions. And this approach will help us make fair comparisons based on consistent criteria. And it'll just uphold the integrity of the process a little bit. Follow-up questions will certainly vary depending on the input, but using this shared set of core questions, I think, would be helpful, and making sure that we have questions per key areas to cover.
Thank you, Member Braxton. I'm going to comment on that, and then I saw Member Ford and then Member Orr. I really like where you're going with that, to make sure we cover these 7 different domains or topic areas. And we'll talk about the questions today. We will finalize them July 30th. And at our July 30th meeting, we will also finalize the performance task and talk about that on the 30th, because depending on what we land on for the questions, it may shift the focus of our performance task so that we're not redundant, or that we don't inadvertently skip over some topic that's very important. So we'll go to Member Ford and then Member Orr.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word my comments. I'm just going to explain what I thought we were going to do, and I think that we should still do that. So my understanding was that this was the scope of the questions that were allowed to be asked, so that nobody's unprepared and there's no gotcha-ing of any random questions, and especially anything that's personal, or we don't want to put anybody in like weird positions. However, I mean, like reading the questions, let's say that that one candidate's whole video is like hi, I want to tell you about how I would structure the Nevada Department of Education. And then it's a whole video, so I got that answer. Well, then I wouldn't need to ask this, number 4 over here, how would you structure the Nevada Department of Education? That would just wouldn't be necessary. So I might think, a question from this page, this whole thing that hasn't been answered is, how have you supported educators in the past? So we should be able to customize the questions to the interviewee based on within the scope. And to ensure fairness, I also support it being fair, and I do think maybe 3 core questions or something that we all agree on are the most important to hear straight from the interviewee's mouth, because we're going to be working with them in person and we need to be able to judge what this person says. So I think, coming up with a few core questions is a good idea, even if it's redundant to their application, but that we should be able to work within the entire scope. We could put something like, hey, all board members aim to only ask 1 question besides the core questions, but you could ask up to 2. Like that could be fair, or so that we're not asking 30 questions of one person. But then the follow-up question I think is very important, because let's say that, Member Braxton asks a question that I didn't think of, or she asks a question maybe on, that I wasn't going to think of asking that person, and then they answer something, but it gives me a little bit of reservation and I would like them to explain it further. That would be a follow-up question. Hey, could you expand on that? You mentioned in your answer that this, and that. Can you give a little bit more detail about that? We should be able to ask a follow-up question to these questions as long as it is appropriate. So I think if we come up with a few core questions and then say, everybody aim for 1 of this from the scope, but up to 2, it doesn't have to be perfectly exact for everybody. It just has to be in the realm of fair for everybody.
Thank you for those thoughts. I'm gonna look at Dagot and assisting with what is compliant with HR interview procedures.
Deputy Attorney General Greg Ott, thank you, President Dockweiler. My understanding is that the same set of questions needs to be asked of all candidates. And I see Deputy Ford nodding. She's had the conversation with DHRM. But so you develop a set of questions that get asked to all of the candidates. And then there could be follow-ups that are slightly individualized, but the core questions are going to be the same.
Thank you for that. So just to reiterate, if you're talking about, for example, we have these 7 different topic domains. So say we come up with 7 core questions. We would have to ask those 7 questions of every single candidate. And then there could be potential follow-up questions, but we have to stay within those bounds of those 7 questions per candidate.
Correct. And to address, I think, Member Ford's concern of, you could have someone who's more fully answered a question. Sometimes you ask question 1 and the candidate answers questions 1 and 4 at the same time. And then when you get to question 4, it's simply, you may have already addressed this, but feel free to expound upon it or just stand on your prior answer. And the candidate has the opportunity to then expound upon it or stand on the prior answer. So it's something that we run into frequently in these sort of repetitive situations where people have kind of answered questions before, but they still get the opportunity to expand.
Thank you for that clarification. And just so that everyone's clear, I was just using 7 as a random number. We haven't decided on a number, but whatever that number is, we'll have to stick with that for each candidate. Member Orr, I know you had your hand up, and then Vice President Hughes is next.
Thank you, Member Orr, for the record. It seems clear to me, based on the idea that we are judging a vision statement, and that so many of the questions that we all brought forward are about the person's vision, that we're looking for a visionary leader. It's something really important to us. I applaud that we're doing that. The questions that give me pause in these sample interview questions are those that confine someone to a particular vision. So there are certain questions that talk about competency-based learning or the Nevada Portrait of a Learner, or things that really aligned to a previous vision, and perhaps that will be the vision that remains. But I think that we should be cautious about confining the new visionary leader's vision to the past vision. And I would like to leave it more open-ended and allow them to express where they would like to take the department.
Good points, Member Orr. And I see Member Ford, did you have a follow-up that we missed previously? You're muted.
I guess it's just a piggyback to what Member Orr just said. But like, this is exactly why I wanted to have a really clear, robust discussion about what our vision is. It doesn't matter what the superintendent's vision is. They're supposed to follow our vision. So if we say we want to go in the direction of Portrait of a Learner, then it would make sense to put an interview question like that. That is the whole entire reason why we should have gotten really clear on what our vision is as electeds and appointments. Like, this is why. We don't just hire somebody and then go, great, let us know what your vision is. Like, no, sorry that I'm not mad at you, Member Orr. I've been saying this entire time. It's not up to the superintendent to determine the vision. That was my question. I would like somebody who's familiar with Portrait of a Learner and the comparable versions in other states, because I personally, and my 800,000 constituents, like going in a direction like that. So I would have championed to include that as a piece of our vision, but we never did that. And here we are looking for someone to come in and give us a new vision. Oh my God. Okay, I'm fine for now, but.
All right, Vice President Hughes, and then I see Member Dawson Owens, you're next.
Okay, Member Hughes for the record. So two things I was going to share back to your initial question, President Dockweiler, around sort of what's most compelling to us. So one, I would just sort of echo Member Orr's comment. I think that, again, as you're designing an interview, if individual members are compelled by certain pieces of vision, then they're going to score and rank those people higher in how they describe their vision, right? So the opportunity to sort of, I think, Member Ford, what you're saying, I think it's sort of a both and. I think the opportunity is in whatever answer they give. If somebody, does not say anything about competency-based learning in their vision, then you might think, that's really important to me. I'm not as compelled by that candidate, right? And we'll all have that chance to weigh in on that. So I sort of agree, Member Orr, with sort of being more general, because we do want to see sort of what their skill set is and what their thoughts are. So that was sort of comment number one. Comment two, the other questions that were really compelling to me were 3 and 5 around student outcomes. And the way I was thinking about those is, I think both of those, particularly number 3, you could embed some of those other areas in pretty easily, right? So if you talk about like actual examples of changing student outcomes, and then you can also say, sort of as part of that question, how did you communicate with and invest stakeholders in that work? How did you align financial decisions to that work, right? So I think there's like a few anchor questions like that we can sort of tuck in some of those other skills that gives us like a more holistic picture while still limiting the number of questions. So I would just double tap on the things around student outcomes feel particularly important to me, that we get, somebody who's able to talk about real outcomes with real kids that they played a role in. And there's actual evidence and not just rhetoric. So I would sort of highlight those two on my top preference list.
Member Dawson Owens, thank you for all the comments. And I agree that the questions need to be standard, and then the follow-up may reveal some of those other things that we're talking about. But also, I really like the idea of having those around the domains, identifying those with an eye to what our STIP is, right? Because that is part of our vision, and including those. And then just for a couple of questions in case they are chosen, on 16, I really like number 16 because I feel like it goes with our second STIP goal, but it talks about how would you support educators in the past? How have you to strengthen the workforce, reduce licensure process delays, and improve recruitment? I'd like to add and retention in there because that's a very important part of that, of high quality professionals. So that's just a slight little add of wording. And then in 18, One thing that just didn't sit well with me is where do you stand on public dollars going to private schools, including charters? I think that wording needs to change to say, where do you stand on public dollars going to private schools, comma, charters and voucher programs, because charters are public schools. And so I would request that little change be made.
Great points, Member Dawson Owens. Thank you. Member Hudson, you had your hand up. Would you still like to jump in?
I'm gonna come back, but I do have a comment. I do agree about the vision, making it general, only because I would like to see what their vision, if their vision aligns with ours. If we give them one that's pertaining to a set vision, they're just going to make their answers more tailored to what we want and not seeing. So I agree with Member Orr and Vice President Hughes were saying, just to keep it general, just to see if they fit into our vision as a whole.
Thank you, Member Hudson. Member Orr, you have your hand up. Do you jump in, please?
Thank you. I guess knowing that the department is just so under-resourced, but with amazing staff, working hard, I think we, like Vice President Hughes says, I think we want to really try to get to the outcomes, like when and where have you contributed to real outcomes, and then how do you prioritize? So those would be things that are really important to me. There's a lot of work to be done, but there aren't the resources to do all the things. So how do you prioritize work that matters and then help people become passionate about that work and ensure that that work happens and that the outcomes are a part of it? So I think I really agree with having some of these larger contextual buckets, but I would like shorter questions that allow the interviewee to give us their take, but really focus on, again, showing us their vision, showing us how they have attained outcomes, and then when and how they prioritize things. Thank you.
So what it sounds like I'm hearing is we definitely all, Member Dawson Owens, you have your hand up.
Yeah, yes, I do. I'm sorry. One more thought. As I was looking through the questions, and like I said, I was really pleased with a lot of the conversation, but one thing that I would like to possibly see is how have you supported reducing absenteeism and creating a safe, respectful, fun, and engaging learning environment where teachers and students' well-being and academic success is prioritized? I feel like some of those things weren't really mentioned in the questions that I saw. Could be wrong. And I felt like that did relate to our third goal in our STIP and is super important for the climate that we're in. And I'm not, I mean, it may come out in the process, but if we're, I would just like to see some of that included. And taking the feedback we had from the parent who said, right, she said, make school fun, right? How are they fun and engaged and successful? Happy kids, happy teachers, and in conjunction with the outcomes and the academic success questions that have been talked about.
Thank you, Member Dawson Owens. I would like to share similar thoughts. I would really like to see a question relative to safe and supportive school environments. How are educators and students feeling safe or well-being? How are they being supported relative to social, emotional, and behavioral health? And then also a question about how they would work with the board, the State Board of Education, and perhaps any experience that they have working with boards and what that might have looked like in the past. And Member Orr, I see you, so please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had a big glass of iced tea right before this, so I apologize for bringing too much energy to this meeting. But my last thing would be, and I know that this is our job, but the state superintendent will not work most closely with us every day. They will work most closely with the department. I'm just wondering if if there's some way that we can leverage, like, what is it that the department is looking for in their leader, their daily leader? Like, they, again, they're under resourced and working hard and doing. We just read a report that said that they've been through a lot over the last several years, and that they're trying to do a lot of work that other states have triple the amount of people to do. What is it that they're looking for in a leader? I think would be kind of an important question to find out from the department. And I don't know if there's any way that we can find that out in the time, or I just think if there was a way to find out from the department or source that question, it would be nice to know.
Thank you, everyone, for this robust discussion. Deputy Superintendent Ford has vigorously been taking notes on the different aspects to bring back to us to our July 30th for a vote. We'll go to Member Braxton real quick. And I just want to share with everyone, if you thought of something or there's something else that you didn't see surface in this conversation, please feel free to send an email to Deputy Superintendent Ford. I recommend by Sunday, so that she can include that as well. Member Braxton.
Thank you. You actually touched on my next question. If there was something that we thought about afterward, would we be able to include that? So although we've had this wonderful discussion and it's been robust, there are things that come up. I know that vocational training is something that is very important in our town, and so supporting career and technical education, a question centered around that and experience with that, I'd like to see. So I'm glad that we do have an opportunity to submit additional questions.
Yes, and thank you for thinking of that. So if anything else surfaces after today's meeting or something comes to mind, please submit those to Deputy Superintendent Ford by this Sunday. Member Ford?
I just want to circle back to my question I had in the wrong agenda item about the recruitments, and I can't think of the word right now, the process to which we're looking for applicants. What's the word for that? I can't think of it. Are we doing any type of outreach or advertising or anything for this position? Or I guess, what are we doing besides having it posted on the website?
Thank you, Member Ford. I'm turning it over to Deputy Superintendent Ford to answer your question.
Lisa Ford for the record. We have amplified our messaging across all of our social media platforms, and I can share with you the national website that we've also posted the job posting on, which is live on their website. And I know through the department, all of their core commissions, groups, and that have been made aware to amplify the posting as well across their platforms.
So when CCSD is looking for a superintendent, it's on the nightly news every single night as an update of what the process is. I had put in that email, I was like kind of certain about it. I would like to release a press release that we are in search of a superintendent and how people can find it. So can we do that? And does the rest of the board support putting a press release out, I guess, tomorrow or something?
Member Braxton, for the record, I did see this morning that there was a mention of Channel 3 News, that there was mention of a superintendent search, and it would be great to expand that. So I believe is there a press release already that we can just send out to some of our other national areas?
Well, and that's because I asked Tiffany Lane to do that, and she didn't know that was even like a thing that was happening, but there's other like TV and print reporters that could cover the story. There's a process to it. I know that, can we just put like a standard press release like we do everything else when we have a new commission, a new report that comes out, just kind of the same wavelength?
Yes, I'm looking at my public information officer and we can make that happen.
Thank you, Member Ford. Okay, unless I'm missing something under agenda item 5, I'm looking at the department, looking at Vice President Hughes, online, anybody? Is there anything that we've missed that we need to cover under agenda item 5? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to agenda item 6. I will now open public comment number 2, which is for non-agenda items within the board's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and time will be monitored by Vice President Hughes. Written public comment may also be submitted to the board secretary at nvboarded@doe.nv.gov. Our secretary will read public comments into the record with a time limit of 3 minutes. If the comments exceed 3 minutes in length, the full text will be entered into the record and circulated to the board. Please note that public comments submitted after the board has officially adjourned will not be included in the record. I will begin with any members of the public who have attended to provide public comments in person. Seeing none here in Las Vegas, I'll look up north.
You're not. No public comment. We have a Fox News in the room, but no public comment.
All right, thank you very much. And Madam Secretary, have any written submissions been submitted online?
We have no written submissions at this time.
All right, moving on to agenda item 7, future agenda item requests. The board is now invited to suggest topics for future agendas. Board member requests will be reviewed by the board president and superintendent, who will determine the most appropriate format to address the topic, whether as a formal agenda item for discussion or action, an informal update, or a memo providing additional context and responses to any questions raised. Are there any? I see member Ford. Please go ahead.
I forgot to put my hand down, but I was about to put it back up. So I'll just jump in. I just wanted to follow up on the last meeting. I had requested a presentation about the history of the state's governance and how it's changed since its formation. So I just wanted to make sure that you got that and find out if there was an update about that. I think it's incredibly important for us to have in the near future with this change in leadership to be involved in that too.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. Again, that's good. We have that on the record. Anybody else?
Member Braxton for the record. So
Member
in addition to the history of governance, governance training, continuing with that, I think that would be helpful. I know that some of our other agencies have gone through governance training, and whatever needs to be updated based on our legislative session and all of that would be helpful.
Excellent. And then hopefully when we have our new superintendent, they can join as well. Member Dawson Owens.
I apologize. The performance task, what we're doing with that?
So the performance task, we had talked about finalizing at the July 30th, or discussing and finalizing at the July 30th meeting after we finalize the questions.
So that will be on. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands, I'll move on to agenda item 8, which is adjournment. So thank you all for your time today. Our next scheduled board meeting will take place on July 30th at 9 a.m. So if there are no other questions, we'll see you all. The time of adjournment is 3:20. Thank you.